Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
How's it going?
Not too bad. Waiting for Miss Berlin to get on, but I think we're going to go ahead and get started. How was your week, Mr. Betcher?
Fun. I dropped off at the kids' house to make sure they didn't need any help, right? Just check on things, make sure they took out the trash and didn't break anything, things like that at their place because they're off to college.
Did you call before you showed up?
People say it's more like an inspection. I'm sure they think that as well. So yeah, that was interesting.
I was wondering if you called before you showed up, and obviously I guess you did not.
Well, I did, but only a few minutes.
You're a fan of the pop-in? You're just a fan of the pop-in?
Yeah.
Oh, nobody likes the pop-in, dude. No. You got to give them time to
try to
clean
do better
up.
next time, I guess.
There you go. Yeah. Or, set up some kind of webcam so that they know you're coming, that kind of thing. If there's a towel on the front door, you got to,
Yeah.
They're having a party or something and, yeah, don't be the uncool dad, so.
Well, yeah.
But,
I'll try.
All
harder.
right. So,
how about you?
Oh, not too bad. I'm working on some slides for a talk that I'm going to be giving at a place called Tag Northwest, which it's like a 20-minute talk and a panel. So I need to find the link on that. I think there's still tickets available, but it's on November 8th, and it's up in Bellingham, Washington, which is a place I've only been to a handful of times. And it's really a long way, and I got to drive there. So, Technology Alliance Group. So they are Yes, the Tag Summit 2019. There it is. All right. So there's a link in the show notes if y'all want to get a ticket for that. I'll be in a panel on cybersecurity opportunities, also giving a quick 20-minute stable type talk on marketing yourself and personal branding. Some kind of like what Jason Blanchard did at DerbyCon, and I reference his DerbyCon talk there. But just something in a 20-minute format. So I'm kind of nervous. I'm, starting to sweat, and I've got 500 slides for a 20-minute talk, so I'm going to have to be talking fairly quickly. But yeah, cool. Any malware that you'd like to mention before we go ahead and bring our guest on?
Ooh, off the top of my head, we do have some cool malware, but I'm not prepared to actually give out any details.
Okay.
Because I don't have them in front of me actually, and I can't remember them. So,
so you got
there's some interesting ones that we've come across.
Okay. Are they like indicators of compromise or something?
Yeah, we mentioned them on the latest episode of BDIR.
When is that coming out?
Cool.
When are we getting the next version?
I don't know. Whenever Michael gets a chance to look over it, but I think we've recorded 2 since that big break we had.
Okay. So when I get those, then I can upload those to Libsyn and get those posted. So very cool. We speaking of indicators of compromise on the BreakSec Slack, someone suggested that we bring a new channel online called Threat Intel, and I was asking, well, what's the difference between threat hunting and threat intel? And it's been fairly active, but it's talking all about various indicators of compromise. So one of the posts today was about, here's an open redirect to something called mysummercamps.com. So somebody had, some nasty stuff on there, and that was used for a phishing kit yesterday, according to Stefan, who's one of the people who had mentioned it. So if you're looking for indicators of compromise and in a mostly FriendDA environment, feel free to hit us up, and we'll give you some directions on how to join the Slack after at the end of the show. So, all right. So, without further ado, we have another interesting discussion this week. This person's on our Slack, and she had been giving a talk at the OWASP WIA meetup, which is the Women in AppSec. And there's a link in the show notes to the original YouTube video. But I'd like to welcome Debishri Nayak to the show.
Hi, everybody.
Did I get that right?
Yes,
Yay!
Perfect. 100.
if you listen to any number of our shows, you'll find that I can ruin a name quicker than anything. So I appreciate that. Debushree, tell us a little bit about yourself. The BreakSec community. How did you get where you are? What you do for a living? Your origin story.
So presently, I am working as a faculty at University of Washington, Tacoma. And originally, I am from India and moved to United States for my graduate school at the University of Memphis, Tennessee, where I pursued graduate degree in criminology and information system and liberal arts. So I combined and worked there. After my graduation, I worked there for 1.5 years as a Infosec analyst, and then my last job was as a geographic information system associate,
nice.
Where I got to work in like GIS mapping and like address assignment and stuff. And then I just moved to West Coast like a month, roughly a month and a half. So I'm here. I love teaching, especially spreading the word. I'm very much actively involved. I heard about BreakSec. One of my colleague, when I moved to, I was like going back and forth, like where I like fit in and kind of America tour, like United States tour all over the States. And I was actively involved in information security. And he told me, it's like, you should check it out. So I loved it and become a part of since I think 5 to 6 months. Awesome. I'm really enjoying the discussions and all this open community. It's very welcoming, very helpful, and very resourceful as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm very appreciative. I'm glad you posted your video in our Slack, because I saw that. And so a little background, there's a lost episode that Mr. Betcher and I have. This was 2015, 2016. We had recorded it. It's actually still sitting in our Google Drive, but we never actually posted it. And if I posted it now, it would sound really, really weird and not right. But it was on risk and risk analysis, and we had done almost a whole hour on it. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, we never posted it. So when you had mentioned that you had done a talk on risk analysis, I was like, this is perfect for our lost episode, and maybe I'll post that one up at some point in the future. But you go in and you started talking about risk analysis in information security,
Yes.
and you have a definition of risk, which I was trying to find where you came up with the definition, but I was there's a number of different definitions depending on which industry you're in. It seems like. Maybe you could give us an idea of how you formulated your definition of risk.
So when I was talking about giving a situation like what is risk, I think risk is different and very diverse based on who you are, where you are at, and what is your work environment. Mm-hmm. So I was doing, apart from like being in education and apart from like, working from diverse educational background, and I worked on several projects. I do have publication as well, and I'm immigrant as well. So for me, the definition of risk is very diverse. Mm-hmm. So I was going through all the materials and just to come up with like a groundbreaking, like what can be a risk for me.
Right.
So when I kind of like gone through what lot out there in internet and then definitions and everything, so I concluded that like it can be a situation which involves like extremely danger, especially in information security, and extensive amount of unrecovered loss which we are trying to open into if there is an attack happens, or if an organization or software, hardware, any product, environmental risk, which is disaster, it cannot be recovered.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's the definition I like combined of my personal experience and my professional experience as well. And this is the thing I came up with.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I'm currently trying out for my PMP certification, so I have to get my contact hours. And one of the things in the PMBOK is they have a positive risk and they call them opportunities. And I was like, oh, okay. Yes. Salespeople call, potential sales opportunities. So there's a risk that the customer they're engaging doesn't talk to them, or there's a risk that the customer will talk to them. So that's a sales opportunity, which I actually found interesting how you're turning that negative into a particular positive in specific instances. So, I got a lot out of your the discussion and the video. Risk analysis is something that I myself do, and of course Mr. Betcher does, because he's analyzing malware, so he has to look at IOCs and the risks involved of those malwares launching in his environment. When you talk about risk analysis, it's a systemic exam. You say it's a systemic examination of components and characteristics of risk. Is there a scope when you're talking about risk analysis? I mean, it can scale, right? It can be down to the project all the way up to the organization, right?
So in my slide, if we mention that the systematic examination of the components and characteristics, this definition is quoted by DHS, Department of Homeland Security, Lexin 10, 2010. So DHS has their different ways to explain of different terms. Mm-hmm. According to them, risk analysis is a systematic examination of a component and characteristics. If we see our slides, that's what risk analysis is for them. So that kind of like when I was talking in OWASP Women in AppSec, I was trying to broaden our understanding of risk analysis in information security, given the fact that I do have diverse background.
Sure.
Of information security and analysis, because when we are forming an information security team, risk analysis is the first step which we look into, despite of any business we are looking into. Can be a Fortune 500 company and can be a business owned by me,
right?
Like one employee or two employees. So right. Risk analysis, the talk I was targeting people who do not have a technical background as well, they can understand, and people who do have a technical background, they can also understand. So because many times in our talk, we generally forget that there are more than half of the population who also work in cybersecurity, but they are not from technical background. That's what my target when I was talking about risk analysis.
Sure. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
You said the analysis was when you form a team. What do you mean by that? Are you looking at the risk of the employee, or do you make sure the employee understands how to do risk analysis?
Great question. So it can be two ways. One is the employees, and if a person has a company, they are doing or their services included customer information and personal identifiable information or any kind of data involved. That's one thing. If they are not from technical background and they have no idea what they're getting into but want to develop a product, then at that point of time they need to have a knowledge of risk analysis. Second thing is that if they are connected with any kind of partners like third-party vendors, they need to understand that if they're opening their business, who they're dealing with. So risk analysis also opening to them as well. So it's both, according to me, that is the owner of and the people he or she is hiring as well.
Cool. So you had a list of steps in your slides. There was one particular slide, so I broke these down by in various steps here. You start out with understanding and assessment, identification, estimation, implementation, evaluation, and then finally decision making. Is this a specific framework, or is there any? So let's say, like you mentioned, you got a team and somebody may not know exactly how to do a risk analysis. Was this part of a specific framework, or is there a framework that you would suggest to people who maybe don't know how to, don't even know how to do a risk analysis? They don't know what they don't know. So I know I need to do one. I just don't know what I don't know.
True. So it may be a specific I didn't follow a specific framework while I was giving my talk. It is the basic understanding when we go through a process of risk analysis. Like, for example, like if a person wants to do a investigation, in criminology or like, any type of investigation in our day-to-day life. The first step is to understand the situation. That focus, I took it, and the concept I applied. I have not found, like, because as we mentioned, that risk analysis is different from every company to company, person to person. So the steps can be very diverse, and there are many, dig deeper. When you dig deeper, there are many components can be added in. Overally, when we talk about risk analysis, I think that if these steps will be followed, it will be a great, it covers most of the domain. Right. That's how I put my talk into perspective.
That's cool. No, I know you said, and we don't, like I mentioned before we started recording, we don't get a lot of folks on here with degrees in criminology, and with focuses in cybersecurity fraud or cybersecurity crime. So I didn't know if maybe there was a specific framework that your criminology degree had taught you or anything like that, or part of the investigative process, if you will. So I didn't know if that was where you had got that from.
So I'm glad that you brought that question up regarding the criminology perspective. There is no framework in criminology perspective that here is the way you do a particular investigation, but there are a couple of theories which I was really fascinated. The course I took called crime theory in my graduate level course. There was a theory called routine activity theory, RAT, routine activity theory. At that point of time, when a bad person targets in a particular susceptible target, they need three things. One is strong motivation. Second is their geographical location, where they're at. And third thing is that you need motivation, you need specific target. Third thing is that whether they are like fragile or not, like where they're weak at. It's called routine activity theory. So this routine activity theory actually gave me a perspective to incorporate that how an investigation can be launched. So that I wrote a paper in graduate level during my graduate school, which I got like 8,000 PhD level course, that how we can incorporate routine activity theory into cybersecurity and build an organization much more safer and have the power to predict as well. So it was more incorporating like conceptual framework still. I'm still working on it, but I do not have a big framework on that incorporating. But like there are professors who are still working on this, combining more routine activity theory into cybersecurity and give a perspective of risk analysis as well.
Cool. Okay. I put a link into the show notes to just the Wikipedia article on routine activity theory. I may have to go back and read that. I was looking down through here and I was like, they say one of the criticisms is it requires motivated offenders, but does not explain how such offenders become motivated. So, might be an interesting discussion for another podcast. Yeah.
Yes.
How do bad guys become motivated to be bad guys,
Well, every target, if we see the history, every target has a particular goal and has a particular motivation. So if you're not motivated, you don't do that. So that's how they put it into perspective. Nice. And this is how I was really fascinated and it actually going through that program and classes completely changed my perspective, how I look into cybersecurity and risk analysis. Based on, because I was very technical before that. Then I started thinking more psychological and behavioral analysis to incorporate into cybersecurity.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. You had mentioned geospatial information systems and working with that too. So there's some analysis there. There's some identification and understanding. If you're looking at, satellite photos, for instance, you have to know, well, okay, that looks like a, railroad site. That looks like a tanker, facility. So there's some understanding, identification, understanding, activity that may be happening there. I'm thinking from an intelligence point of view using GIS. I don't know what your particular bent was in that regard, but, there's a lot of data to be looked at and sift and analyze there.
True. My work was basically focused on more about like geographic information system, like database, like Esri. That work I was focused on.
Mm-hmm.
But there are very cool research going on in cyber GIS by I think University of Illinois, UT Knox. Combination of geographic information system, it can incorporate with cybersecurity and data security as well, because there are huge lump of data we are gathering from our maps, like from point A to point B. So those analysis, what's happening with those data and who is monitoring, who is in charge. There are many questions to be asked and discussed. And the more diverse approach we are, the more connected we are to the technology. There are many things to be excited about.
Yeah, that's very cool. Okay.
Debrishri, when you say an assessment, and are you mainly talking about a self-assessment or just any kind of assessment like a third-party assessment?
When I talk about assessment, I believe I am talking about when an organization does a assessment of the risk based on how connected they are and how many devices they're using to run their business. And when I talk about risk assessment here, in particular Mind Talk, I'm talking about more a organization and owner of a business when they are mentioning any kind of assessment, especially related to security.
But are they doing their own assessment, or are they hiring professionals to do it for them?
They are focusing. I'm focusing on more what they are doing, because as I mentioned that, like, I am more focused on like small scale business as well, because small scale business, it is very expensive and very cost effective if they start doing by themselves, or like not hire the third party vendor. They can focus on, but it depends on the budget. But if they don't have the budget, then self assessment, having those knowledge will be very helpful.
How do you keep them from, or how do they keep from giving themselves a good grade because maybe they're a little vain? So, you know, and they think they're doing a good job, but in reality, they may not be, because it's really hard to judge yourself, right? I judge other people on what they do, but I judge myself on what I think, right? There's that bias there. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand what you are saying. When I would like to again dig deeper, that when I say self-assessment is doing self-assessment, one risk assessment, and then go and take a consult with a person who is a very expert. So with the self-assessment at first, they will definitely come to know where they are lacking. So having a risk analysis of self, of a business they are owning, actually help them that where they are actually need help. Rather than if they will not do a risk analysis, then they will think that, okay, so I need to spend $300,000 on this particular information security without knowing what and how much portion they have to spend the money. It's all about budget and finances. So without having an analysis, how do they know? Means I know you mentioned that like self-judge is not a good way to go, but how do I know where I'm good at or where I'm at? So that's what my perspective is.
So
okay, I kind of messed that up. People tend to judge others based on what they do, but they judge themselves based on their intentions, not necessarily what they do. And that's kind of the bias I was talking about. And it's really hard to do a self-assessment because you don't have an unbiased perspective, in my opinion.
When I say like self-assessment, doing focusing on risk, having a self-gathered knowledge, and we always mention, and I would like to just give an example conceptually where we are at. For example, if I am good at math or if I'm good at information security, how do I know? First, I have to take a pre-test, and there I am. So it's always a understanding of what are the components available and what I have. When that analysis happens, then it actually clear it out that where I need to invest more, where I have to invest less, so that I will be not going out of my budget by putting or like putting security in, putting whole company security into danger.
Devishri, so on our last episode, we talked about two of the two risk analyses that are types or techniques that we had mentioned, and one of them was qualitative and one was quantitative. Do you consider your methodology in your talk a quantitative or a qualitative framework or a method?
I actually always believe that quantitative and qualitative approach should be working together to get a best analysis. If there are loopholes in every analysis, quantitative and qualitative as well. So when we combined qualitative and quantitative based on where we are at, like for example, when we are doing after the assessment estimation, we need a quantitative approach to go, because in estimation we need a number when time management is involved, finances is involved, and there is software is involved, cost is involved. So at the point of time, we need a quantitative analysis as well. So in my approach, it's not my approach when I'm saying that most important points when we do risk analysis, it always has to be combined of qualitative and quantitative risk analysis together.
Okay. So you were speaking at the Women in AppSec. Was there a particular bent on that? And the point I'm thinking about that is if a customer who's never done a risk analysis before just decides to start doing one, they may look and go, well, we've got 300,000 lines of code. We haven't done any software reviews in a couple of months, but we're probably okay. It seems to me like they're going to do an analysis and then come maybe to a third party who's going to maybe perhaps tell them how far off they are from whatever the industry best practices is. And I would imagine, depending on the industry, you're either doing very poorly or you're doing fairly well. If you're in the SCADA world, you may not be doing well at all. Or if you're in, you're doing financials, because of the sheer lack of compliance required in the financial community, you may be doing fairly decently. Are there any industries that you're calling out specifically that maybe don't get risk analysis as much as they should, and they should be doing more of those? I mean, is there a cadence by which you should be doing these on a regular basis or a semi-regular basis, or just whenever, post breach? What are we looking at there?
So I would not like to call out any particular industry, because I think that till the time cybersecurity attacks are going on, we are under risk, and risk analysis has to happen updated basis, based on organization, the data amount of data they are handling, and based on the data location where they are at, maybe in US, Canada, Europe, Asia, Middle East, wherever they are at. I used to work in a company where the data centers operate 24/7 around the year, so they don't stop for a second.
Right.
So because there are 500,000 employees maybe plus. And if we are talking about small scale business, in US business, it's an entrepreneurial country. That's my understanding. US, everybody has they would like to, be very innovative and try to self-taught. And there is no one methodology. If you have willing to succeed technologically or innovation, there is a way. So the analysis, everybody has to come together. I heard a talk a couple of days back in SIGAI. SIGAI is a IT education conference by ACM. There was a talk I heard that that there should be a T approach. T approach means that you need to have a diverse background. So to do the risk analysis in an organization, any organization like educational organization, because we deal with a lot of personal information, huge organization, software industry, GIS, geographical system industry, people, healthcare industry, everybody has to have a risk analysis based on their because it will open them what they are at, where they're at. And we have to be very, very careful while we are doing it, because there are many good things will come out that where they're weak at and where they are literally ignoring the fact that information is at risk and things are not handled properly by the compliance and rules and regulation, and privacy is in kind of a questionable situation.
It's kind of hard though. In small companies, you can't have a bunch of people doing it. I work at a company right now doing engagements for companies that, the entire company's on the phone call with us during the kickoff, and there's like 2 people, and one of them is the CEO and the lead developer, and the other guy is the sales guy and the CTO, and they don't have a risk background. So we try to do our best because it's a requirement for them to go through these assessments, but a lot of them don't even know what to do. I mean, we've had to tell them, you can't, you need to be able to store your tokens correctly and why that is. And a lot of times, the first time that a lot of these companies ever hear about, threat assessments or, pen tests or, oh, this is really a problem and you should look at that, is when, they're in the middle of a crisis, or, they're being forced by a third party to actually get an assessment. So, what are some quick wins for a small company that doesn't, that has never done an assessment before, and really don't even know what the risks or threats are? How would they find that information?
I'm glad that you raised that question, which I always include in my talk wherever I give a talk about risk analysis. Education. You have three people, right? One is a CEO, CTO, and another is sales guy. Everybody has to pitch in, because salesperson bring the perspective to that. What are the sales information they are talking about, the market value, or what is market there based on the product your company is using. Second thing is that the person who is CTO, I assume that he or she must have some technical background and understanding of some experience, whatever it will be. I really don't put a question mark to it, like every background. Educate yourself what is out there. For example, if you are expanding your business to California, definitely you will find out there are California Privacy Act, and then there is state laws, there are government laws. If you would like to expand to Europe, there is GDPR. So educate first yourself, and then have a discussion, have a meeting and have a discussion that what are the training manual, have a quick playbook that these are based on our knowledge. These are the situations we can come up, and have a question ready. When we are putting splitting our knowledge into different questions, that will help. Then kind of having a playbook, it actually helps us implementing policies.
Right.
That 3 people have diverse background, and what are the policies we are follow, individual policies. And if your business is located in Washington, what are the state of Washington has laws information wise, and then what are the federal government laws, information sharing, what are the things needs to be registered. Those are the information. Have a document ready. I always say follow the documents, because as we mentioned, we are preparing for our talk. We already have a document. So that security document, risk analysis document is vital. Third thing is that if your business, or when I say your business, not particular yours, means in general, when business is dealing with third parties, they have to make sure that third party does follow certain standard. For example, I was working for a healthcare company, and I was doing a risk analysis, and because we are a healthcare company, we depend on certain products for our third parties who actually we open our data to them. So they have to be compliant by HIPAA regulations. So while I was doing risk analysis, I was doing a color-coded format because we have like maybe 50 vendors, that whether they have a security team or not, if they do not have a security team, who handles the security part and how much knowledge they do have, because many times IT support people also deal with information security in small companies. So if are they properly educated, trained, and do they know what they are doing? Do they know literally what is personal identifiable information they are doing? So once we color coded kind of green, red, and yellow, green will be okay, they have security team, 3 persons are in charge, they do have a HIPAA person who have enough knowledge on HIPAA. And people who are in a yellow, it means that they do have 1 person in security, but they incorporate with the IT people and 1 or 2, and they are like suppose 5 person in the company, but their salesperson and IT person and security person kind of pitched in and form a standard playbook. People who are in red, literally they do not have a information security team manuals, they do not have knowledge about HIPAA. We pitch in as a source company, we pitch in that how we can help you out to provide, but we give them a timeline that, for example, if they're like 90 days, I'm just giving you an example, it's not mandatory, that within 3 months you have to comply yourself, else you will lose business from our side. Because as a healthcare company, we also have to follow the standards. And we do not want to deal with clients who also do not follow the guidelines of particular. When it's like that, there is constant negotiation, constant conversation will create a safe culture, information security culture.
So that sounds a little bit like, minus instead of 3 stages, there's 5 in the CMMI model. So your green is like what would be like level 3 of the model. There's a policy, it's written down, it's codified, the users know about it, it's publicly available and accessible, and they actually follow those processes. That sounds about right. Whereas the yellow would be kind of ad hoc, or they don't have a team, or people are aware of it, but they don't necessarily follow that. Am I wrong in thinking that?
Well, I have to look at it, the particular 5. I do not have the knowledge about it. But the thing, when I was working in the healthcare company, at that point of time, we didn't have a security team. We are building from the scratch. So my boss I was reporting to, and there is another person who came up with the strategies that what we should and how we color coded. So the HIPAA, the government, what they are providing the sources is very detail oriented. What I did as a team player, I went to the website and got all the resources as I needed and break it down and explain to the information. And then from there, we kind of went through specific. We didn't follow a specific model, but yeah, I would love to learn about it.
Sure. There's a link in the show notes for all of our listeners and for Debishri, if you'd like to go and click on that, about the CMMI. So one question about estimation. Estimation for, depending on which type of model you use, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, is like, how, in my opinion, I don't know, I'll ask for, it's the chance that risk will occur, correct? It would be, either once, and you break the risk down, and you have, in your talk, you were giving discussions about information risk, network risk, hardware and software risk. But do you have like specific risks for those network risks, or do you talk about frequency or the chances of that being, something that could happen? How do you break the estimations down?
So when I was talking about identification of the risk, at that point of time, I was putting into perspective that what type of category of risk can happen. It depends on what your geographical location is. For example, when I'm talking about environmental risk related to technology, if we are in Washington, we are in a kind of in an environment where we can talk about, like, if somebody is in Texas, it's more open to tycoons. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, if somebody is in Indian coastal area, they're more open to flood than the earthquake. That's what I'm putting into perspective. Is it depends on where you are at, what your business are working on. Because if your business in healthcare industry, you are dealing with information with healthcare benefits, based on what data you are stored and where your data is stored, it will be completely like more network wise. And your business, if it's a cloud focused, then it is more like cloud and network side of risk. And if you are more into healthcare, then it will be more informational risk. So it's particularly like if we are developing a product called like a mobile phone. So when you're doing a mobile phone, like big companies who are manufacturing different mobile phones, so they also based on hardware risk and also software risk as well. And times when they are connected to internet and Wi-Fi, there is informational risk always. So when I was identifying and categorizing a risk, it depends on what your business at and where you are located at. So you would like to start a business in India, so your risk will be completely different. The law and regulations, the government rules and regulations, state regulation will be completely different than the United States. So risk actually follows you where you are at.
Okay. All right.
Also, another risk I would like to mention, cultural risk as well.
Okay.
When we are using a technology, cultural risk as well, because there are certain apps and certain services cannot be available in certain countries based on their government regulation. So cultural risk as well is part of risk analysis.
Okay. All right. Mr. Betcher, did you have a question there?
Let's see. What's the difference between a risk analysis and a security assessment, or are they synonymous?
No, risk analysis, when we are talking about here, risk overall, we are looking at each point of starting from understanding a risk based on environment, based on physical risks, and computer risk, hardware, software. Like we're doing an overall risk analysis and information security. Security assessment, according to my understanding, is when we are doing a threat assessment or like information security assessment based on things happen or we are assuming in future or forecasting it's about to happen.
Right. So would you do a threat assessment to help identify risk? I mean, that's how we typically do them at our office, but is there any kind of specific way that you could do threat modeling to help identify that risk for you, especially at an organizational level?
So would you please elaborate your question? Because when it's like threat assessment, we are like really specifically targeting about software threat, or we are doing overall?
Well, I mean, we've done, my company, we've done security assessments on hardware, software. A third party has asked us to vet a company. So, we do a security assessment by pen testing them or by reviewing their documents. If the system that they want us to look at is complicated enough, we'll actually do some threat modeling. My friend Dr. Crispin Cowan has developed a methodology similar to how other ones work on making sure that you can identify which parts or which components of the application or the hardware would be needing to be tested. It helps us reduce the scope. Instead of having to test 8 or 9 different components, we look at the ones that are the most critical risk areas and then focus our testing on that. It seems to me a threat model or something might be helpful for an organization, maybe a small one all the way up to, threat models appear to scale. So, you do them. It seems to me a threat model would be helpful in identifying risk.
I understand the perspective you're putting into. I would like to take that suggestion as well. My understanding of risk analysis is once you do risk, then you understand what will be the threat, or its opposite, according to your experience.
Well, in some of my experience, the customers don't really know what threats or risks are out there. I mean, they're vaguely aware of, this thing might be bad, or, if somebody was to gain access to X or Y, that would be very bad. We always try to ask those questions. What would be considered a high finding, or what would be the thing we would need to wake you up at 3 a.m. for? And usually they're like, oh, well, if they can gain access to the database, that's probably a big deal. Or, if they can log in as customer B and they're customer A, or they log in as customer A and can see customer B's data, that's not a good thing. So when we're doing these kinds of assessments where software is involved with, say, multi-tenant users, one of the risks we like to call out, because like I said, a lot of these customers don't even understand their own risks. They don't know what they don't know. We ask them, hey, should I be able to do X? And they're like, oh, no, you shouldn't be able to do that. Then we okay, we need to test to make sure that that's really the truth. And
True.
And things go from there. So if, like you said, with risk of floods or earthquakes or typhoons or what have you, the policies, especially incident response policies, are written, or business continuity policies are written based on the risks involved. So it's like, if your database, your data centers should be geographically separate because you live in Washington State, so there's earthquakes and floods and fires and volcanoes and all kinds of stuff. So your data center, your other data center, your backup data center should be someplace like Las Vegas or Dallas or someplace like that. So your backups can't be taken out at the same time as your primaries. So that was my thought about how threat modeling can help find risks or whatever.
True. That's a great point. Oh, what my understanding, that's a great point. Like, my understanding is when we do a overall analysis, which is a risk analysis, and then we kind of break it down that what can be threat and what level of threat, and then we put our data centers or distributed or backup plans. So it can go up. It can go back and forth. We can do a threat assessment first based on the company size, but risk analysis gives us the overview picture, which is like a superset type, where it will break it down. Like, you can do threat assessment, you can do vulnerability management, we can do monitoring, and then opening of a security operations center based on what is your budgets are. And when people don't know, customer don't know, majority of the time customer don't know what's going on in the backside of downloading an app, or based on when they are talking to strangers, like how they should approach. Another thing also, having a risk analysis, I always talk about in my talk, that shared approach. So everybody has to be accountable for.
Sure.
And it's not only like this. There was a question was like, who should take the responsibility for having a risk analysis? Is it the company who are providing services, or the user who are using it? I always recommend that it should be a shared responsibility. It should be a shared responsibility, because we are part of technology and we are connected and we are using that service as well. So first it starts from both of us, because as a service provider has to make sure that the services are risk free, which is kind of like ... but it's more secure, because I think that in a security world, the secure will be when we put in us inside the box and throw that into the ocean. So 100% security doesn't exist, but most updated risk understanding. And they also service provider also constantly send updates to their customers that you need to understand, unless like an agreement, they have to say yes, but they have to raise awareness and send more services and more explanation what they are doing.
Okay. So go ahead.
Most of the executives, when they talk about security risks, they really want to know, okay, what are my odds that I'm going to get ransomware? because they hear about ransomware and how bad it is, and usually that's their number one concern is ransomware.
True. So that was like one of my last like decision making process. Once proper risk analysis based on different attributes and the standards has been formed after a certain time, when we're preparing a risk analysis report and go and provide that report to decision making, like all C's, first CEO, CTO, CIO, whoever, like CISO. At that point of time, they want to know, like, in a minimal sentence, that what is the major risk and what should be target upfront, like today or tomorrow. It's like there is a different category of risk, prioritization of risk as well. So how they will address. And ransomware is a huge issue. How they are going to, I think that proper planning of risk analysis can lead up to proper planning, and proper resources can lead up to avoid that particular ransomware attacks as well. Having different technological updation and understanding between partners and the vendors.
It really depends on the scope, right? Because
Yes.
not every risk analysis is going to go up to the CEO or CTO. It may, depending on if it's organizational, if it's tactical thing, if it's on the fly, the decision of whether or not we mitigate that risk is gonna depend on the scope given to the risk, right?
It's always the scope of a person who does the risk analysis. Because we are thinking like maybe risk analyst, 3 to 4 risk analysts or manager who are involved. Mm-hmm. It may not end up, the file may not end up with the executive level, but based on the present time, if I understand, going back and forth in 2 countries, everybody is worried about cybersecurity. Everybody is worried about attacks. So, and main discussion is how we can avoid it. So based on the, we are living in 2019 where cyber attacks is happening every day. Mm-hmm. So that will be a priority one. That's my understanding.
Right. Okay. You mentioned the report that in the video, you mentioned the report must be clear with no jargon. Is that because, again, depending on the scope of the report, you would multiple people could be seeing it in the organization all the way up to your executive levels, or people who are not technical in nature?
Correct. So when I mentioned that not jargon, because not everybody understands. So for example, I'm coming from security background and social science background as well. So many times I play the role between the bridge gap and expanding more to their level. So when there is executive level, there are people who are coming from who never took a even if like technical class in their life. They use technology. Use technology because nowadays we all are using technology. They know how to use it, but they don't know what is particular meaning of threat modeling. What are the threat modeling out there? What are the combination? But they understand the business side of it. Mm-hmm. That what could happen. So the report should be jargon free. When I mentioned that, like technical jargons. So as a technical people, we have our code words as well. We do have our definition as well. That's for us, not necessarily for everybody. Rather than if we solve it out, make it more understanding, it's a part of negotiation process that if we would like to reach out to broader audience, we need to speak the language what they understand.
Right.
So that's what my point was.
Okay. All right. Very cool. So one of the last things in your talk was the examples to reduce risk. You had publishing, creating, implementing policies, of course, will help reduce risk because you've called out the various risks, and your policies are going to highlight how those risks can be mitigated by doing X, Y, or Z, whether it be a password policy or, the controls you're putting into place for email, what have you. You mentioned agreements with any third parties that you might have to help reduce risk. You might ask the third parties to do yearly security assessments or, to make sure that they maintain a, PCI compliance or HIPAA certification, HIPAA accreditation, or those kinds of things. One of the last couple you mentioned were training and education and timely testing. So we could start with training and education, but I just wondered what kind of training and education you're talking about. Is it just staying abreast of what's in the industry, or are you talking like something more formal?
So when I'm talking about training and education, it's a combination, because all training do not provide many education, because the proper method of training, like if you tell me as an employee, I'm going, okay, so you have to finish this information security training, I'll just go and watch the video, not even literally paying attention, and like let it go and then complete.
Right.
That's a training as well, and then at the end of I will be certified. So is that a proper training? No, it's not. So we need to like combine like training and education in a fun activity, which actually gives us the proper knowledge, which the role I am in, or the role you are in, or everybody in, to have a outcome.
Okay.
So based on industry, based on updated technology, based on current cybersecurity awareness, those training is very important based on a timely manner. So it should not be like every year, once in a year, because when I'm making a statement that cyber attacks are happening every day, so this training may be, according to my personal opinion, at least every month. And many people who also disagree with me that every month is also too late. So they want to do every week or every 15 days based on the service they're providing. And so that will actually help them how to proceed, because maybe you are a senior director of a huge company and people meet you in a Starbucks or in a bar. So you are open to the risk as well, because where you are positioning yourself.
Well, it really depends on the types of threats. If like Mr. Betcher, it's talking about weekly malware stuff. If it's an indicator of compromise that needs to go out immediately, it may be something like a short newsletter saying, "Hey, we've noticed this email with this subject. If you are receive this email, delete it and let us know, or forward the email to whoever." That can be a type of training, even though it's more like a bulletin or an announcement or something like that. But it's training your users to identify that risk and act accordingly, right?
That can be one, which is like daily kind of like updates, like a summary, what's happening every day, kind of a news type of, everybody love to watch the news. So for that, because we are connected with mass population, which is normal people, like we have to come up with certain plan which makes them more exciting.
Right.
We talked about, because in class I see because I've been teaching not here, but like from last 10 years, I volunteer in many. The one thing always come up that the students say that we don't want to be bored.
Right.
We don't want any content should be bored, rather than more exploring, more interesting. So as an educationist here, the roles come that like we'll build as a training provider. The training should be in such a way that people want to hear.
If you can figure out how to make security training exciting and interesting and fun, you can pretty much write your check to sip Mai Tais on the beach somewhere, because there's no training that is security based that is good and fun and whatever. I've seen the gamut of it. I've seen stuff at a big company that I had to do because I was a vendor to maintain access on their network. It was a video. It all comes down to the questions are, so easy, a caveman could do it. All the way up to, in-service, 3-hour anti-terrorism trainings when I was in the Navy, where it was like, you're wasting my time. I just got off at 5 a.m. for a watch standing, and now you're going to make me stay until noon again. So I've been up for 36 hours. I mean, there is no training that is good. It really has to be. If you can figure that out, then you've basically cornered the market on anything that anybody out there is doing. So, and I know there's going to be training companies that are like, "Oh, we're so much different." No, you're not. No, you're not. So one last question before we let you go here is you mentioned also examples of it reducing risk. Timely testing does that mean just pen tests and what does that mean? Is it just pen tests or is there something else there?
2 points I would like to clarify. When timely testing I mention is that as a security person, that timely testing of our own risk analysis where we are at, because as time goes by, the product we use also has an expiry date. It's not like we are out of the market, rather than we are actually challenging ourselves, getting better and better in our own business and study the market if it's cybersecurity. Second thing is the timely testing of our own information security knowledge of our own employers and customers as well, that whether they understand what's going on. So 2 things very important, like, when we're talking about network testing, security testing, policies testing, because every policy, like if a policy is made a year ago, it doesn't have significance right now. So because it's exponential growth. Information security industry is like exponential. I don't think that it's a linear, it's exponential. So everything is changing every day. So that's why I mean by timely testing both ways, because as a customer, also we need to be updated. As a service provider, also we need to have security, doing more risk analysis so that we'll update with the technology.
So you're talking like when somebody logs in, test your customers on what exactly, like that they're using your application correctly and as securely as they can, or what are you looking at in regards of customer testing?
Customer testing, whether the customers who are using your service have enough knowledge about your service updates.
Okay.
For example, if a application 5 years ago they are using, and after 5 years, many features has changed based on the user demand. So the customers who are using a service, do they have enough knowledge? Do they need any help? That's also a service provider responsibility as well as customer responsibility. But as I mentioned, proper testing, that it will make them understand that service provider users are also needs to be update with the technology.
So it sounds like vendor training, like when one of my previous companies, we used Rapid7, and one of the things was when you got the application, you had the option of getting vendor training to show how the product worked, how to use it properly, so that you didn't have errors or any kind of issues. So you could attend a 2-day course on how to become a Tenable certified vendor assessment kind of guy, like, oh yeah, I really know how to use Rapid7 stuff. So that's what you're talking about, something like that?
So certification is maybe it depends on the company, but certification, like, I think as a user wants to be more active on how they can use the service rather than having a certification of a particular service, until they want to be certified and go and look for an opportunity, rather than like many services, like at the end of the day, everybody likes certification, having that what they're targeting it. But when I'm talking about timely testing, it's just how to use the features, like when you are adding certain new features in security. And as a user of, if I'm using a product from last 5 years, I didn't know this. It's like, it actually makes my life better. Mm-hmm. So that as a user, and the service provider has to make them realize that it's just timely demand, because sometimes it's difficult to embrace the change, but change is going to happen anyway, whether we like it or not. Yeah. So, and many times, most of the time when it's a security update and operating system and security analysis updates, I would like to give you a simple example to make it put into perspective that, my grandparents and people who are my relatives who are more than 60, 65, they are never open to email address and information security password and everything. And when I created an account for them, they started sharing their password and blamed me that why I am not sharing my password with my loved one, because I'm not trusting. But I told them, I said, like, it's not 50 years ago, it's now. So it's like, you should not be sharing. There are certain guidelines you need to follow if you use certain services.
Sure.
That's what my point.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we get that a lot. It really depends on, again, we're talking about threats, and there's some people who are diehard. Yes, we all need password lockers and what have you. And then I counter being a little more pragmatic that my mother and my mother-in-law only go to about 5 websites, so they only need like 2 or 3 passwords. So, people make fun of the password books or the password cards. As a matter of fact, there was a tweet this week. Somebody had said, "Oh, does anybody think this is a good idea?" And it was a password card. So it was just a list that you could just write your passwords on. And a lot of folks were like, "Yeah, well, depends on your threat, really. By storing it in your house, you've reduced the threat or the risk of somebody taking over your accounts. As long as the passwords are long enough, you can write down as long a password as you want. You just have to, type it in. You've reduced the threat of, account takeover, from 7 billion people to, say, people in your immediate family. So in some ways and in some cases, that password may be more secure than an online cloud-based password locker system that you're paying money for. So it really depends on your scenario, your threat landscape, and what you're trying to protect, I think.
People in your family and burglars.
Right. But, again, there's a threat there. If a burglar gets in and just, realizes that, my mother's, passwords are underneath her pillow or something like that. I don't know if they are. But if somebody breaks in the house and, finds her password list, then it would be fairly easy to change 3 passwords. And every once in a while, I go in every time they visit here. I'm like, "Oh, Grandma, have you changed your password?" "Oh, no, I haven't done that." "Well, let's make you a new password and you can write it down for yourself." So we write them down, and we make new passwords. We don't just add a 1 and it's not, fall 2019 or anything like that. But every, 6 months or so, I make her up a new, 12 to 14 character password that, she can easily type in if she needs to, and it has some special characters and upper and lower and numbers. But, she doesn't need a $49.99 a year subscription to LastPass or, 1Password or something like that. That's overkill for her. And it's, ideally something will happen. It'll get popped, and then all of her passwords get shared anyway. So this way, there's less chance of that happening. So, the risk assessment that we did and the threat model that we did showed that having a password box or a password card was a lot better than something else. So, anyway, that was my little story, but. Maybe it's something you can help out with your family there, Debishri.
Well, so what I said, like, as a risk analysis based on like technology. So I'm glad that like your family are very open to embracing the change and like especially the technological advancement. There are certain people who do not want to do that. So That's what my point when I was talking about risk analysis. Educating and timely testing. If we do conduct a risk analysis, we'll come to know that what services our users like and can kind of be a part of it, and what they didn't like, and what services if they can enhance. It's like a service enhancement process, which makes our life better and our users' life better, and the company we have will make our life better as well.
Nice. Okay. Well, I don't think we have anything else, and we're after the hour. So I wanted to just thank you for coming on the show. And if people wanted to discuss more about risk analysis or, invite you to come and speak, because I know you're a speaker on the Women in AppSec. So, I mean, you're open for other conferences. How would they go about, getting a hold of you?
So you can ping me on my Twitter, and I do have email address if you go to the YouTube I provided. Okay. For Twitter, it's protected, so you have to request to follow up with me. So I have to check because there are many. It happened my Twitter was public before, but due to certain restriction, I had to make it protected.
Understood.
So you can reach out, and I also give talks on cybersecurity in general, and the more diverse approach as I mentioned. Cool. I always love to have a discussion. If anybody would like to discuss why I'm standing there and where I'm standing there. And I'm very much advocate for women in cybersecurity and kind of like, addressing gender gap issues.
Okay.
Because I feel that strongly. I feel strongly about it that if we work together, everybody, then this issue of gender gap is not difficult to achieve.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, we've had Tanya Janka on, who was working with WOSEC. She moved up to just over here in British Columbia, just up the road here. So she's doing a lot of great work for WOSEC in that, and trying to get a Seattle Women of Security group started as well. So always a big fan of helping out where we can. So thank you for coming on. And are you going to be speaking or attending any conferences that people can find you at?
So recently, I do not have plans like maybe the next month onwards, because I'm completely like jacked up with my students and the education thing I'm doing.
Okay.
But like I always like go to different meetups every week and try to volunteer.
Cool.
So if anybody needs a volunteer and like teach in programming and especially security, mathematics as well, because I'm a mathematics teacher as well, really good at college level.
Okay.
I always try to help. If anybody needs any help, please let me know.
Nice.
Through Slack as well. I'm in Brexit Slack as well.
Awesome. Okay. B-Side Seattle's coming up in the next early next year, so something to keep in mind if that interests. Also, HushCon is going on, so if you need a ticket, I know a guy who can get you on the mailing list to get a ticket. So if you want to go to that,
would be great. It's like
December.
Anything, if it's happening in Seattle, Bellevue, Redmond, like nearby, because I actually moved from Memphis to here. I drove, so I love to drive.
Wow.
So cross country by myself. So I love to drive. So
Nice.
Anywhere my help is needed, love to help, because I want our cause to be addressed, which is information security in general. Reach out to more and more people, and people should be convinced that they should at least have enough knowledge to do social engineering by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That social engineering to open up, because everybody is on social media, so that's the risk as well.
Right.
So How to do that? So happy to help.
Cool. All right. So, Mr. Betcher, tell us a little bit about what LogMD is doing and how people can get a hold of you if they want to talk about incident response or logging or artifact collection.
Yeah, LogMD, the log and malicious discovery tools, what I work on, and actually 5 minutes before the podcast, I was working on it. So we do have our static analysis tool integrated, and we're just doing some final testing on it. So that'll be out pretty soon.
Cool.
If you want to get a hold of me, just go to the website, log-md.com.
Awesome. And how would they get a hold of you if you're on Twitter?
At Betcherpwned.
Okay. Very cool.
Boettcher, my last name, Pwned.
Right on.
And you did mention that lost episode. I think that Amanda should listen to the lost episode and record comments on it.
No.
Right? And then we can release it. That way, she's involved, right?
Oh, kind of like a riff tracks kind of thing. No, I don't think I want to do riff tracks of that. No. That was 2016, I think. And we were a little...
Or like, God, what was that show that was on PBS, I think, where they'd watch an old movie and make comments?
Was it Mystery Science Theater?
Yes, Mystery Science Theater. She could do something like that.
We can't say that one anymore. It has to be riff tracks because it's anyway. Mystery Science Theater. Some of the dudes doing MST3K started doing the riff tracks thing because I guess there was some licensing and ownership. But it's the same thing. There's people sitting there watching B type movies or whatever. So yeah, completely. I'll ask her. I'll see if she'll do that. Yeah, we'll make that a thing. So speaking of Ms. Berlin, she does the Hackers Mental Health villages at conferences. If you're interested in bringing one of those to your conference, you can tweet out her organization at Hackers Health on Twitter. She's also on Twitter at Infosister, INFOSYSTIR, and she's on our Slack quite often. Speaking of our Slack, like I said, we have the new Threat Intel channel. We have a threat hunting channel specifically. So I figured out that apparently they're quite different. I was given different definitions for what the difference of threat hunting and threat intel is. We also have a SIM and logging channel. We have a book club, which I think is wrapping up soon. We'll be picking another book to start reading in the near future, so you can get in on that. You can send us an invite. We actually protect our Slack from potential bots or people who are nefarious. You can send us a tweet, DM on Twitter to our official BreakSec Twitter handle, which is @BreakSec. Or you can email bds.podcast@gmail.com and get an invite. And we have a lot of people on there. We have a job board, a lot of good jobs in there right now. For instance, there's one for an operations engineer in Atlanta or remote possibly. The senior manager for cyber threat hunting. And also Leviathan Security is looking for security testers at all levels, as well as PMs potentially. So if you're looking to maybe become a project manager or trying to move over into that world of awesome security consultants, please hit me up and I'll send your resume over and we'll get you in this started. So we have we're on Google Play, iTunes. Please leave feedback. The more feedback we get, the more exposure we get. We have a TPub store where you can go get a T-shirt or a coffee mug with the BreakSec logo on it. There's also some from the Infosec Campout, which was our conference that we held this year. And we have a Patreon. We appreciate all of our patrons who are supporting the show. That helps pay for just time and effort of running a community like our Slack, hosting fees on Libsyn, and pays for the Zooms that we have that are actually helping us to run the podcast right now. So appreciate that. All right, that was it for this week on Breaking Down Security. Have a great week. Be kind to one another. Take care of yourself because you're the only you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.